welcome back to What Happened to You with a view this time. We're recording in person for the first time since episode 2. I'm here with my friend Josh, who runs Comedy Pass Studio in Santa Monica. Highly recommend checking it out. A fellow comedian who talks about trauma. I am excited to have you on here, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Just to clarify, because Mike will be mad if I don't, he runs
Okay.
I'm just the talent.
Mike Head runs Comedy Pass. So thank you for letting us use this space. That's where we are right now. We're on Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica doing a podcast. I remember the first mic that I did here, I did the molestation material.
Everyone did that night.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a theme.
I remember talking about it, and then I remember being like, oh, like, did anyone else like have this experience? And you like put your hand up in the back, and I was like, yeah, dude, like, come on. It's like a very funny moment between strangers when you find out that somebody else has been through something similar. So
have you ever had anyone come up to you after you've done that and been like, I've never told anyone this, but like, yeah, me too.
A lot, yeah.
It's very interesting. I'm just like, wow, like, lots of times they're drunk and will come up to you after a show or something, and it's just like, man, like, it's a good feeling because it's like, I'm glad you're able to like get that off your chest and admit that to someone, but it's also like you have to leave them after that, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm a comedian, not a therapist, and I have to like let you go after that, you know? It's like, it's kind of a rough thing too, because I feel like I think about them all night, and I'm just like, I hope they like, you know, can go somewhere or like talk to someone.
Yeah, but I know exactly what you mean. But I think in that moment, you have already provided so much for, you know, somebody who wasn't expecting to deal with that at that night, if ever, you know? And like what you provided for them by speaking about your experience is invaluable. And I felt the same way, like almost like I'm abandoning them or something if we don't like keep chatting about it. But really, it's like you've done more than enough already. But it is a crazy feeling. Like, I remember the show that we did in Lakewood. I got on stage and was doing some molestation material, and one of the comics, he wasn't even on the show, but like a bunch of people kept getting on because it was like a hot show, and like there were just a bunch of comics in the audience, so people kept getting on after like the people that were booked got on. And this guy got on stage. I think he must have been 50, 55. And he was like, hey, shout out to the kid who was talking about getting molested. Like,
you're talking about the old cat, right?
Yeah, the old cat.
Yeah, I remember that.
So this dude gets on stage and starts talking about getting molested, and he was funny about it. Yeah. And I was chatting with him after the show, and it turns out he had never told those people about
that.
Like, this whole group of people in Lakewood were like, that was like his
Those
crew.
were his friends.
Those were his friends that he'd known for like a long time. And after seeing that set, he was like, fuck it, dude, I'm going up there.
Courageous. That's awesome.
It was, and for him to also be like that old too, it's like, it was cool to see like this is helpful no matter what age you're at, and that there are people of all ages who haven't spoken up. And like when they see somebody joking about it, it like makes it easier. It was also crazy because he was like, the only person that I've ever told was my cellmate in jail, because he was like, well, nobody will find out. It was one of those moments that felt like very purposeful. It's an amazing feeling to make people laugh doing comedy, but it's a whole other thing to be like helping in a way more than that. So yeah, I know what you mean. It's a pretty cool feeling. And I want to hear about like how you got into comedy and how what your trajectory of trauma comedy has been like. But before we get into that, what happened to you?
So I didn't understand not being molested. So like my joke about my uncle molested me is really just a softball way to introduce the audience to like my trauma, because it's way worse than that. Like my uncle I didn't even know my uncle. Like my uncle didn't molest me. I didn't, like, he wasn't in the picture. So when I was like born or whatever, like my first memories are of being molested. So my mom was a prostitute junkie. She did crack, meth, heroin, like all the like hardcore needle drugs. And she would like pimp me out. She would sell me like time with me. And like, it wasn't like, I guess, that explicit, but she would like be with these dudes who were obviously way too into babies to also be heroin addicts, and like leave me with them while they would bring drugs specifically, not fuck her, and like she would go do the drugs, and then whatever happened to me. You know what I mean? So
she knew.
Like she would make sure that I was like in the house when these people would come over, you know. So it wasn't like she was unaware. She knew my appeal to the specific people.
Wow.
And she was just like in the drug community. So it wasn't like everyone, but it happened pretty regularly, because it was like an understanding, you know, that she had with these people. So I don't know, like I know all that now, remembering and being like living the life that I've lived. So I understand what happened, and I can put like words to that. But at the time, that was just reality. Like that's just like all I'd ever known.
Yeah.
And honestly, the only times I got any peace or any kind of like good feeling at all was when she would go on benders and leave me home alone for days. But like, that still sucked. Like I could only eat what I could reach. Like she didn't like leave food for me, you know?
Yeah.
But it was like I got to feed myself. I got to make decisions and like be in control of my life in those periods of time. So like those were the greatest periods of my life at that time. And so I got to watch TV, and like that's pretty much all I did anyway. Like they didn't even when I got a little older, I never went to school. Like I just was at the house.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this at the time, but my mom actually had like 4 other kids that had all been taken away from her, like every single one of them. And then she had another one. And I forgot to mention too, my mom was schizophrenic, paranoid, schizophrenic, like audiovisual, and bipolar. And the only drugs that she didn't want to take were the ones that the judges and the doctors wanted her to take. And she was doubling down on the ones she wasn't supposed to take, which probably weren't helping her mental state. So, yeah, that's just like how I started growing up. And so when I went from that into foster care, which isn't like a ton better, it's a real Russian roulette.
And that was, so basically your first memories were of getting molested by your mom's clients.
Just randos, yeah.
And then what was the time frame like between that and when you got into foster care?
That was it. Like that's what happened. I would get molested, beat by my mom and whoever guy she was with. Like they were all like hitters of women and children. And I would get beaten, and eventually, after like tons and tons of trips to the hospital, this is the 90s in the South in Tennessee, so it took a minute, but like finally they couldn't even ignore it anymore, and they like took me from my mom again. I was like, what are you waiting for? Like you already took 4. Like why is you still need so much proof? But it ended up one dude named Harold, he like hit me in the head with a 2x4, like a whole like building material piece of wood for a house on the front lawn of the projects where I like grew up in Tennessee. And eventually the cops got called to that because like, you know, he just slugged a 6-year-old with a board, and like I don't even remember any of it. I was, I'm sure, unconscious. So yeah, that's how I finally got taken away. And then foster care was weird. One dude definitely molested me, and I don't know how they didn't see him coming. He worked for Fox. He was like a producer when Fox was like a small thing. Like all I had was The Simpsons and like wrestling. Like that, then this dude worked, he was a producer for Fox. And I'm sure he's like literally probably a multimillionaire now out here, and I don't even remember his name. I could probably find out though. But yeah, that dude's definitely still molesting kids.
Was he like part of the orphanage, like helping?
No, it wasn't.
Helping would not be the right word. But.
No, it wasn't even an orphanage. So the first place I went after being put into the system was Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. And that sounds great, but it is a horrific place. At least it was. So when I went in, the first thing I experienced was someone my age, like 6 years old, was being held down in a rubber room and being shot full of Thorazine by 4 grown adults. And that was like, they just left him there after that. Like, and they were in a straitjacket. And I didn't know what that was at the time. That was like terrifying for me. It was like I was being taken aboard the mothership. So like I didn't know what was happening to me.
Yeah.
They literally would have us do exercise because we couldn't go outside. It was total lockdown. They would have all these children in this lobby, this like doctor's office lobby-ish type thing. And we would watch Richard Simmons videos and do them. And if you did the exercises to the satisfaction of the Nurse Ratchets around, you would get a baseball card. And the baseball card was how you would get like snacks at the end of the night shit. It was a fucking prison.
Holy
run on
shit.
baseball cards and Richard Simmons.
That sounds like a Batman, like Dark Knight Asylum type shit.
Yes. That was Vanderbilt Children's Hospital at that time, as it was. And they didn't even put me there because I had done anything.
That's what I was going to ask.
They put me there because they didn't know what else to do with me until I got a foster home lined up. Like, it was an emergency situation, so they were like, here, go with these nice people. So, yes. That was my first experience, and then I went to the first like foster home I went to, like got molested again. So like again, nothing outside the normal, just a nicer setting. He had a nice house. He had another little boy there, and the real thing that tipped me off about him, I was wary from the beginning because this motherfucker wanted me to get an earring. I was 6, bro.
What?
And he was trying to go get my ears pierced.
Wow.
And the kid that was already there had his ear pierced, and so did this guy. And he was like, and I literally remember telling him, I was sitting up on the top bunk, and I was like, no, like, I'm not doing that. And he was like, oh, no, it'll be fine. Like, it won't even hurt. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I don't care about the pain.
Yeah.
That's weird. Like, even as a kid,
This is where
I was like, I'm 6. I don't need an earring. I'm not thinking about accessories yet. I'm thinking about what you're going to get me for dinner.
Molest me all you want, but I will not wear jewelry.
Damn right. Will not let you dress me up like your whore. I have self-respect, damn it.
So this is at 6.
Yes.
And this is the first family
the first foster, not even family, foster guy.
Yeah. And how long did that go? Or actually,
couple months. I batted him out.
What do you
mean?
So
like I literally just was atrocious. Like I would do anything and everything. Anything that seemed fun to me, I knew was going to get me in trouble, and I would do it. And eventually he just got tired of me.
So you were like just trying to get out of the situation.
Yeah. You know what his threat was too? This is what was really creepy. Think about it. He used to tell me that I'm the end of the line. I'm your last stop. I'm all you got. And it was just like, nah, I'll see what's behind door number 3. Like, there's somebody else. I'll go back to the hospital. Like,
you don't understand what
I had a bunch of baseball cards.
Yeah. I'll trade this Babe Ruth to get the fuck out of here.
I was not giving a fuck, man. I just knew that if I pissed him off enough, he would either like knock me unconscious or like somehow eventually I would get out of there, because that was my only experience previous.
Yeah.
Was and I don't even think I was that bad. I think these people were just assholes, but I was doing the things that they didn't like, so I was bad, quote unquote.
So what happened? What was the thing that caused you to be able to leave?
He was dating some woman who had her own little children, and I think we got into a fight, and I like whooped her ass. And he was just like, she like demanded I leave, and he was just like, I could have 3 kids, or I can have 2, and one of them's a piece of shit. So he went with the 3 children. I'm sure they're happy.
And then what happened?
Gotta play those numbers.
Yeah. And also,
especially in pedophile land.
Big time. They have like definitive age ranges too, where because sometimes I wonder, like, if I hadn't spoken up about getting molested when I was 10, if there would have been a certain age where the guy would have stopped molesting me.
You would have gotten unattractive.
To them.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, I wish it happened sooner.
I'm seeing some stubble.
Yes.
I don't know if I can handle all that. I need you to shave that crotch. How are you going to explain this to your mom, who buys all your hygiene supplies?
I wish I'd known I could have taped some pubes on myself when I was 9.
I just get like what do they call that? Like a crotch wig?
Yeah, like one of those fake mustaches. Put it on my crotch region. Like molester deterrent. It's like mosquito repellent. Hair. Can we isolate
the gene for hair and just start pumping that into people? Can we start looking like monkeys again, please?
Yeah, that's right.
Just full fur coats from birth. Nobody will get molested anymore. Well, I don't know. Monkeys, they have been known to be sexually aggressive with each other.
Do you think monkeys molest monkeys?
Oh, well, absolutely. Baboons rape each other all the time.
But baby baboons?
Shit, I don't know. I think we need to get National Geographic on that.
I mean, it's interesting because if not, then that's human learned behavior.
I wouldn't be super surprised. Oh, but that was what I was going to. Before we cut out before, I think that it's not necessarily about the being attracted to a child. I think that what it is control, and that children are very susceptible to that control, specifically when you're coming at them from an angle of like a friend in a strange world like that. Like in my situation, anyone that treated me nice got my attention.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get anything nice very often. So like the people that my mom would bring over were like gentle. Like it wasn't like they were just like, you know, Hobby Buchanan, and they're just like, yeah. They weren't like tearing me up. But I mean, they were, but they were like polite about it, I guess. I don't know. Like it was better than it could have been.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't aware of that, but it was just like, it wasn't being struck in the face. You know, it wasn't physical pain right off. So it was like, and they would like, last time they would have like candy and stuff. Like my mom never bought me candy. Mm-hmm. She bought drugs and like the bare essentials. Like I grew up on cold hot dogs and Cheerios. Like seriously, that's what I ate most of the time.
Well, it's interesting too, like thinking about how it's definitely an element of control. I imagine part of it is trying to normalize their own experiences. Like if they grew up in environments that were like super out of control and like they had similar experiences, it's almost them trying to like make it like, maybe it's like getting even, or like trying to make it seem more normal. Like, now this happens to everybody, it's not just me. It feels like it is more complex than just being attracted to children, which I'm sure is part of it. Who knows? It's obviously different for every pedophile, but...
Well, I mean, like you said at the mic the other night, like literally almost every decision you make can be boiled down to fear.
Yeah.
And like what you're afraid of, whatever that may be. So it's like, yeah, I'm sure there's attraction there, but why are you attracted to them? Like, I don't think that's the real issue. I don't think that that's what we need to treat or like focus on, because that's the problem. Like, that's what's happening. That's what's stemming from it. Yeah. That's the action of what's going on in the decision making. But it's like, why are you making that decision? Like, what about that attracts you? And if you really examine it, I think any pedophile really sits down and examines it, it's because they can't deny you. They can't turn you down. They can't treat you less than. You know, they're children. You're so far more in control mentally, emotionally, physically. Like on every level, you're in control of a child. Mm-hmm. And they can't even do anything about it because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's for me why I think it's a control thing. It's the ultimate control over someone else. And like you said, it's a response to something that's happened to you, but I don't think that's necessarily revenge. I think it's an attempt to, in a broken way, it's an attempt of a broken mind to be safe. And to feel that safety, and it's like a drug to them. To be that in control of anything is addictive, because that's like the only thing they really want deepest down inside them is to be in control of their world and their environment, you know. And that's just the way it comes out. And I think that represents not. I don't think that's specific to pedophiles. I think you can find that in a lot of illegal activities. Like that's just like anything that puts you in that feeling of control that you find first. It's what you find first, really. I think that first time is more what you're like a learned thing where you're doing maybe what happened to you, or it's just a situation you find yourself in with, like, you know, maybe nothing happens to you and you have a great family, but like you go to Cub Scout camp with like the wrong motherfucker, you know, and like it maybe only happens just the one time. Like you said, it's definitely situational. But I think if people in my situation anyway who have that story, especially, and like I've gotten, and this is off topic a little bit, but I got really into serial killers for a long time because I was afraid that I was going to end up being like that, because I looked at a list of like psycho traits and I like hit every fucking one of them.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh shit. And the difference is really just choice and like making choices.
And the difference too is that the awareness of like your own upbringing and your own tendencies, and the difference between you and somebody who goes and does that is that I imagine most serial killers aren't Googling the symptoms of serial killers beforehand.
Yeah, no.
What you were talking about with the control aspect, like it makes a lot of sense. Like if you were molested, you were in an environment that you had no control over, and maybe that is more of the root of pedophilia. I don't know, but it's definitely dependent on the person, but it's inevitably part of it. And it's interesting to think about, but I think the good thing is just being aware and like knowing that, like, because I've talked about this on the podcast before about how like there needs to be a way for pedophiles, people who like start to realize that they're attracted to people that are underage. There needs to be a way for people like that to get help.
Yeah, and I think that that's the real issue. And I think a lot of people, so being in those places with those people in the facilities where I was, the children's hospital, and then after that, when my parents sent me to like quote unquote boarding school, those, when I talk about that, those are really like residential treatment facilities. Like they were boarding schools because I lived there and went to school there, and like there was other children there, but they were for children who like had unknown issues, you know, like basically my parents didn't know what was wrong with me. They just knew I was broken.
Yeah.
And so I went to this place in Montana where like that's what they did. They were like they were a research granted facility, so they would provide high-end therapy, but they were also like did some shit that was fucked up. So there's a thing called holding therapy, that the reason I remembered anything that happened to me at all was back in the day there was a theory that if you could induce trauma, that it would force the memories up.
Whoa.
Right, like that works, but it's also what the CIA does to people. You know what I mean? Like it's fucking torture, like legally by definition. It's actually illegal to do holding therapy. It's child abuse now.
Yeah.
But my parents signed off on it, and that's what they did to me. 2 grown adults would hold me in a restraining way, but they would stroke my face and say kind things to me be weird. Yeah, it was the fucking weirdest shit that's ever happened to me
were like
in my life. Yes, they were simulating an out of control feeling with uncomfortable touch and feeling. Yeah, they basically fucking molested me again without touching my dick. But they like mentally and emotionally molested me.
Yeah.
And this happened when I was like 12, 13.
So
they would physically hold me down for hours, bro. For hours. Like this wasn't like something they did. It was torture. So like what ended up happening, they fucked my life up because of that. Because my parents would come.
And just to clarify here, so
sorry, I'm like backtracking.
The guy, totally fine. So the guy who originally took you in, the guy who wanted to give you earrings, that happened, and then
I was in a bunch of other foster homes,
okay,
and then I got adopted by parents when I was 7. I've been with them ever since.
Sorry,
I should like clarify that.
Totally follow.
And those are the people that sent me to the treatment facilities. When I was 12. And so then that happened, and they did, and like it wasn't like I don't like blame them. I'm not upset with them about it. They didn't know what else to do, and they lived in their own little rich person bubble. They had never had any contact with that part of the world, the dark side of humanity. They both grew up wealthy reasonably. My dad was a high school football captain. My mom was a cheerleader. They were literally married like right out of high school. Like that was them. That was what they were the American dream. They had 4 kids. My dad had built 2 houses. He had a good job. My mom didn't work. And they wanted to adopt another kid. Like my mom couldn't have more kids, so they wanted another one.
So you were adopted by this family at 7.
Yeah.
And they already had 4 other kids.
They had 4 other kids of their own. And then after me, they ended up doing adoption as like their career. Like my dad retired from his job, and they started working with these people in an international adoption foundation that specifically did adoptions from China, and still do. They're still associated with it. They still do fundraising. My mom's in charge of like all of the donations that they receive, like distributing them to like TCU and Baylor and other colleges who are doing research on like child abuse and child response to trauma. A lot of the best work that's happening today in the world of child trauma response and how to deal with that and like react to that as parents, especially newly adopted parents, are all that's coming from the work that my mom and dad have done. So they're like, I can't fault them. They're not bad people, but they didn't know what to do with me, and so many scars and furrows got made like learning from me that it's just the relationship isn't there.
What was that relationship like when you got there at 7 until you went away at 13? What was that experience like?
Like they tried, like they did, but like until I was like 10, I didn't come out of day-to-day mode.
Yeah.
So they couldn't understand why I couldn't be regular, and I didn't give any thought to what they were thinking because I was busy surviving and being like assimilating. Because like to me, at any moment, all that could go away. Yeah. Or at any moment, someone could, slap me or hurt me. And sometimes they did. Like my mom fucked me up a couple times, but like, not that I didn't like warrant it. Like if I had a kid that acted like that, I would want to fuck him up too. I wouldn't, but like they didn't know at the time, and they're much better, and they've done really good with my younger siblings who were adopted. But like unfortunately, there are scars there that can't be undone, and part of one of those is during these holding sessions, it's torture, like 3 times a week for hours. And they would like prep me for my parents coming, and they would do it in front of my parents, and they would make my parents be the one that held me.
What?
Yeah. So it was just like, it was so uncomfortable and so mind-fucking. And these people were writing papers and getting published because of this. And they were like, ooh, we have results. They were basically forcing results with torture. Essentially, like if you boil it down, that's what they're building their careers on the tears of children.
Child abuse.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So what happened after that treatment? Treatment is
another
the right
facility.
Word,
yeah. I mean, that was the 1990 shock therapy. Like people don't know that happened, but that happened to a lot of kids. Like I was not the only one that they were doing that to. Yeah. They had a whole group of subjects that they were doing that to.
So you went to another facility, and then
it was another facility that specialized in sexual trauma. And so that place was weird on a different level because I was 14 when I went there.
Yeah.
And when I went there, so I was going through puberty, and that whole place was like all they talked about was sex, and it was all dudes. And then you weren't allowed to touch each other or be within a certain range of it. It was like having COVID. Like you had to be 5 feet at all times from each other. And if you couldn't touch each other, that was like an offense where they could put you in like a rubber room for. Like it was fucking weird. Like all they wanted to talk about was sex and the sexual inappropriateness. So it was a weird mix. And I was there when I was 14, going through puberty, always talking about sex, it being everywhere all the time and not allowed to indulge in it at all, and surrounded by nothing but dudes. So I'm putting those pieces together. I had a few guy experiences, and I'd had some before that. Growing up, I was hypersexually. Oh, they were normal. All of them in the woods. I ended up having just making out with everyone, touching around on each other because we were all kids. We didn't actually try to do anything.
I feel like for a long time in life, I was, and still am to some degree, I associated a lot of worth with sex, and if people didn't want to have sex, I felt like I took that well, that's my fault. Almost. It couldn't possibly be that you're just not interested in this moment. It's I what did I do?
I still struggle with that. Dating is weird.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's awareness too. We're both very aware of how that affects us, which is the difference. We think about it and don't like it.
Yeah.
So choice. Yeah.
It is.
But it's I don't say that. I guess that makes it sound like everyone who's been abused is a choice away from fucking a kid. I don't think that's the case at all.
No, it's not.
I do think there's an element of, I guess, attractiveness to that. But I definitely think that what you like is a reflection of the things that you're missing in your life or were missing at a certain point when it was important for you to have those.
What do you mean?
Like, so I feel like, and this is just, just armchair therapist, but I feel like a lot of girls that I've had interactions with, and men, they really like to be choked and like made to do things and that kind of thing. And it's part of that is like what I have liked, because I like to be in control, and I understand that, and I've translated that into like a dominant role with women.
Yeah.
And that feeds into my mom issues too. It's like a whole like triforce of issues.
For sure.
But I understand that about myself, but I also like all the girls that I've been dominant with, all of them been molested, mostly by their dads or like their stepdads, like a father figure that was supposed to be strong and in control, but not in that way. It's so prevalent in society that way. It's like that must be normal, but it's like I've been in relationships that aren't about that either. I mean, to be fair, she ended up being attracted to women, but
there, brother.
We cuddled a lot, and we had a great relationship. Like, she was my best friend, and
Dude,
like
it's interesting to think about, like, with submissive behavior and dominant behavior, if that's the root of it, which is like wanting to sort of fill this void that you were missing or were like overexposed to as a kid.
Well, and I can relate to those girls too. That's another reason why I feel like I could say it, because like I also feel very submissive towards men.
Sure.
Like I have that, like whenever I have been in a relationship with a man or like done that, I've definitely taken the follow role. It hasn't been me leading, but like almost never with women am I like that.
Gotcha.
But I had abusive male figures in my life who that's the only reason they liked me. And then I had a mom who used my sexuality for her own gain. So like, but those are the exact people I'm attracted to.
That's
like,
so
I'm so attracted to girls who are gonna fuck me up and use me, and like, that's my fucking type. Yeah. And they're always blonde and little for some reason. I don't know. And my mom was tall and brunette. This is not really hard after you think about it enough, It's just all the Nile gets out of the way, and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty basic. I mean, my life hasn't been basic, but my response to it is.
So, you've obviously done like a bunch of reflecting on your experiences, and what has been like, what's helped you the most in terms of like processing all of this stuff?
Dude, honestly, and I don't mean this to be like, the cool answer or whatever, but like taking LSD alone. Like
alone.
Not trying, like when I take, and I don't do it anymore because I got to a point with it where I felt like it was becoming just a way to pass time, like weed. It wasn't helpful. I wasn't using it as introspective. But for a couple of years in college, the end of college, like I was 25 or 26, and I thought that it was the right time for me too. I feel like those things find you at the right time, especially at the beginning. And my first experience happened to be with someone who had a vial of pure acid and was like a big time weed dealer in Portland. I didn't know this guy. I was like at a friend's house, and he came over, he dropped 3.5 drops on sweet tarts, and my friend, who understood what I needed at the time, he just left me there for 24 hours in his home, and he just kind of was like my like guardian angel for that road trip. And he introduced me to this. He left me in his home alone for 24 hours. He told me he was going to do so, and I trimmed my balls off, and I like thought about things, and that started me towards that self-reflection mode. Like I didn't do as much of it that night, but it started me down that path. And down the path of like using that as a way to be my own therapist, because I had so much knowledge. I've been exposed to so much professional therapy. Like I literally know, I've gone to therapists as an adult, and I'm like, you're a fucking joke. Like I know so much more than you. I don't mean like, don't get it twisted. I don't think I can help you or anyone else.
No, dude, I felt the same way.
As far as myself.
With therapy, it's like you find things. It's obviously incredibly beneficial for some people, but like I felt the same way. I went to a therapist in New York. This is about 9 months after I started doing stand-up, and I've like been doing stand-up about getting molested, and I'm like talking about it constantly, and like feel like I'm healing for the first time in my life. And I went into the therapy session the first day. I was like, here's what happened to me, laid it all out, like first thing, you know, because at this point I'm telling strangers about it every night. Like, I don't give a fuck about you finding out about this. So we talked about it. I did like 3 sessions, and eventually she was like, hey, you don't need to be here.
You got a good handle on this.
Keep doing stand-up. Like, it's just talking.
It's therapy, yeah.
Yeah. So I know exactly what you mean. And we actually never got to this. What happened after your, from ages 14 to when you started doing acid? What was that like?
A lot of anger, man. I just didn't know what was going to happen to me. I was in these facilities. I eventually realized that I was never going to get to go and live at home, and why. And it just made me so angry to be like, I just felt like almost like teased, you know. There's like, oh, there's this family waiting back here for you, but it's like there's not though. And they're all growing up without me, and like it went so far, and they kept me. They literally like abandoned me, but then they've also learned about all this stuff in the meantime. Like when they started doing their International Adoption Foundation, they like and started doing all this research and donating money to it and learning themselves. They know all these things that I'm saying now too. Like they're just as learned now as I am about what happened, and they have so much guilt. Like my mom can't fucking be around me without crying.
Wow.
But it's like, but they also like don't call me and shit, you know. So it's like, they're just, you know, they're just fucked up people too, and you know the shit happened, and they don't know how to deal with it, and I don't really like want to deal with it. I want it to just be like not a thing, but it is.
Yeah.
So we just like don't really talk as much, and I don't really talk to my brothers and sisters as much because they all have their own lives, and like we grew up apart. You know, as soon as I left those facilities, I went to the Marine Corps. Like I didn't come back home and start interacting. Like I got away. Mm-hmm. And so like the next time I saw my family after 17 was like I was 21, 22 years old. Like they didn't even know who I was.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize me. My dad literally didn't recognize me when he saw me for the first time in a long time. I don't know. I've just always kind of raised myself. I'm resigned to that. And
it's probably, I mean, definitely part of why acid was so effective. Solo acid.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely started growing up at that point, like trying to be an adult.
Yeah.
And stop being, because I had done several crimes before then and been in jail and like.
What were you in jail for?
I was in jail for, so stupid. So I didn't have a car, and I wanted to go on a road trip. And my friend had a car who was living with me, and she didn't like her car, and she was mad at her dad for not getting her a new car. First world problems, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, yo, I'll take the car, and you just tell the police that, like, you know, somebody stole it, but you don't know who. And this bitch ratted me out immediately. What? She like straight up, I guess her dad got so mad at her that she got scared, and she was like, oh, this is what really happened. Like Josh took the car. So I ended up in Missouri with guns drawn on me with a stolen vehicle.
Oh shit.
And like they fucking pulled me out of the car. I did like 2 months in jail in Missouri, and then they didn't like, I just denied it up there. I was like, look, the bitch gave me the keys. I told them what happened, and they were like, we're just gonna let Tennessee deal with this, right? So they sent me back to Tennessee, and when we got there, basically it was like I had the keys, and she was my friend, like provably. So like the judge was like, yeah, that's probably right. Like, that sounds stupid. Like, that's probably what happened. So the judge believed me. It was a real people's court situation. Yeah. But
also,
yeah,
we are fully in the dark now. It's pretty epic. Pretty much can't see, but honestly, at this point, it's kind of
it's a vibe.
Going to it is a bit of a vibe, dude. Just the sunset in the background.
If you've been with us from the beginning,
yeah, we
now
appreciate
being treated to this beautiful sunset behind us.
Some Santa Monica sunset for you. You don't need to see our faces. Just take in the...
This is now a FBI interview.
Yeah, now it's fully anonymous. So, when you were in the Marine Corps, did you experience any like abuse or anything like that?
No.
Actually, let me rephrase that.
No.
What was the Marine Corps like?
The Marine Corps was amazing. For the first time in my life, I was actually, like, what I did was who I was. Like, it was reflective of me. Like, I threw myself into it immediately. I was all about it. I wanted to be the best Marine I could be. I had a actual good role model a guy who worked at one of the places that I respected and looked up to, who was a Marine, and that's all I wanted to be. I was like, I'm gonna be a Marine. Like, I'm gonna be like this guy. And he was strong and tough, but he was like fair and just. Like, he never let anyone get bullied, but he also didn't take anyone's shit. He was just like, he was exactly how I wanted to be. He was like kind of an anti-hero, but like a good guy. So I jumped right into it, and immediately that's like, they didn't know me. It was kind of, I didn't even think about it before I went, but it was really liberating that like everyone just knew me as an awesome guy, a great Marine. Everyone liked me, and that had never been the case in my life ever before. Everyone always knew me as like that fucked up Coley kid that like steals and shit, you know? And so like, it was a real sense of pride to be a Marine, and it really like made me want to like be like, I saw hope. I saw a future for myself. I saw something, like I saw that it didn't have to be just me being in facilities and in jail and being a fuck up. And at this point I hadn't been in jail, but I had been in all these facilities, right? And then I got hurt, and I got hurt overseas. And
what happened?
Let's say that for another podcast. It's kind of a long story.
Yeah, no.
But essentially I got metal in my belly,
like,
and
you got
and
shot,
like,
or
blown up.
Whoa.
And it caused me to be like laid up for like 5 months, and my belly was exposed, and there's a big scar on it now. It's fine now, and I'm very lucky to have all my limbs and all that, but it caused me to not be a Marine anymore. Like, it was 2008, which was the financial crunch, and the military was not retaining people who had served for 20 years, you know, like, or 12 years. Like, they were getting rid of anyone that wasn't needed.
Yeah.
And I was in bed for 6 months, and I only had like, at this point I was like 3 months into my contract of 4 years. So they just were like, you know, you're done. And I didn't realize I could fight it at the time, and I just signed whatever they put in front of me because I was a good Marine, and I ended up just getting out. Like, that was it. So I miss it. Like, it was great, but it also, like, I feel like now I have that purpose again as a stand-up comedian. And but I floated a long time, just not really knowing the fuck I was going to do in myself. And I think that's part of the reason I did some of the questionable shit I did and experimented with drugs and all that. I was just searching and like figuring things out. Like, that was the first time in my life where I felt safe enough to like make mistakes and be a kid, was when I was out on my own. But unfortunately it also like kind of screwed me for a while on adult shit that I didn't know about. Like, credit and taxes, that kind of shit.
So what brought you to stand-up?
I always loved stand-up, but I never had the self-esteem or the ego to be like, I could do that, you know? Like, it always seemed so daunting. But it was always something I was like, that's so cool. Like, if I could do anything, I want to be a stand-up comic. And I always just held on to that, but always did regular jobs. You know, I've always had a job. It may not have much money behind it, but I've always worked. And I've always been very proud of that. So I searched a long time, and then I was married in Seattle to a girl, to my best friend, who ended up coming out to me, and that was a whole mess. But it was during that time, like right after she had come out to me and had her own trauma memories come up. And I'm really grateful I was there to help her with that, because she had a very similar experience to me. And I was able to be there for her when she was going through all that. And we were away from our families. Like, we were up in Seattle. And,
we're in Seattle, by the way.
We lived in Capitol Hill.
Nice.
And we worked at Happanessa on First Avenue, right across from Four Seasons. Do you know Seattle U?
Yeah.
You know, right across from it, in front of it, there's the Rhine House.
Yeah, I love Rhine House. I was at
Irish
Rhine House for last, like, 3 months ago.
Bro, that Irish pub next door?
Yeah.
That was my bar.
Epic.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was when I was going through my, like, divorce and, like, separation. And we also, right before that, me and my wife were polyamorous for a year. And so, yeah, I lived in that bar until pandemic hit. And then that's when I didn't work there anymore. That's when I started doing stand-up, because everyone I worked with was always like, shut the fuck up, we're busy. Like, yeah, you're funny, but like later, you know? And so finally, when someone was just like, you're doing stand, like, you're coming with me to this open mic and you're gonna fucking like tell your jokes there. And I did it. And it's really an interesting story how I felt. It never has ever happened to me at any other time in my life. I went on stage. I was super nervous. As soon as I stepped on stage, I went still. Like, my whole body. Like, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't nervous. I actually, like, landed a couple jokes. I'm sure it was fast. And when I went back to my seat, I just remember as I sat down, I, like, from head to toe, felt pinprick. Like this weird ass feeling, like, all over my body.
Yeah.
And all I could think was, finally, I know what I'm gonna do, like what I'm supposed to do. Like, I know what I'm gonna be good at. Fuck. I was just like, holy shit, finally. Because I'd been searching for years, like 10 years. I didn't really realize it until that moment where I'd been looking so hard. And it felt so fucking good to just, like, know what I was gonna do finally and what I could focus my energy towards.
You feel it. I felt the same way after my first set, where it was like, I'm gonna do this forever.
Right? It's like, how have I not been doing this already forever?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really grateful for Seattle. I think that, honestly, I look back at it now, and I learned so much in that last year there. It was one of the hardest years of my life, but I learned so much. And then, honestly, COVID happened for me at the perfect time, because I was I was in pain. Like, I was very angry again for the first time in a long time. I had recently understood my sexuality and, like, come out about that.
Mm-hmm. And you were...
This was just a few years ago. Yeah, this was 31
wow.
when this was happening.
Awesome.
And then the divorce got finalized when I was 32. And then, like, right before COVID, I moved out. Like, literally days before. And was stuck in a new apartment with a new roommate that I barely knew for like a year. So that was interesting. It was actually really cool. I started working with homeless veterans. Sorry, that's where I was going with the COVID thing. It allowed me the opportunity to step away from the bar and drinking and the drug scene. And, like, I had a lot of regulars there that were social workers. And in Seattle, you don't need necessarily a degree in social work to do social work. So I was working, especially during COVID. So I was working directly at a homeless shelter with homeless vets. I grew up in homeless situations. I'm a veteran, so it was, like, the perfect way for me to, like, direct my energies at that time and reset before I moved here.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. Like, that all of that worked out. It sounds like the divorce ended up being the best thing for both of you in terms of...
Yeah, I think she's doing really well. I talk to her occasionally, but it's not quite back to, like, a friend level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were polyamorous.
We were.
Does that mean an open relationship, or what is that?
Well, we both kind of didn't know either. So... No, it's not. It's a relationship where you and your wife or significant other date a third person.
Oh.
And, like, have a relationship with them. At the time, though, I just felt it was a lot of, like, I regressed a lot during that time because it really felt like another abandoning. Like, she was my best friend. I had never, ever, like, been with anyone like that. And even though I'm over it and over all the jealousy stuff and all the sex stuff, I had missed the shit out of her. Like, you know, like I don't know how it would ever be that way with someone else. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm not holding out hope. She's pretty stubborn.
Something tells me there's going to be somebody even better.
I mean, hopefully, we'll see. But I'm not really focused on that these days. I finally learned to stop using sex as a crutch. I mean, I still have sex, but it's not as important to me as it used to be. I'm
a lot happier when I'm not prioritizing sex.
Yeah.
It feels like it's something that, especially, like, if you're prioritizing sex, like, sometimes, like, I'll go through phases, and because I was in a relationship for a long time, and I felt like when I got out of that relationship, it was, like, out of college. So I felt like I had all this missed, like, experiences to sort of catch up on almost. So
that's how I felt about the marriage. I can relate.
Yeah, very similar. So
6 years of lockdown.
Yeah, my relationship was 6 years too.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And I feel like also in Seattle, or originated in Seattle. And it felt like after that ended, it was like, it wasn't really about connection. It was just a warped perception of what I needed to feel okay. Because in college, it was like, oh, I just hooked up with this chick. You know, like, and you, like, people would be like on a high for a little while, and you tell everybody about it, and it was like all this stuff. And so I felt like I was trying to, like, fill some sort of a void also that it was left by my ex. And then I would go out and I would meet somebody and we'd hook up and have sex, and then I would just feel weird and like kind of gross, and it's weird to go from emotional connection and emotional sex to like fully unemotional sex and no attachment, and like it's a very different experience. And I think that when I stopped prioritizing that and started putting the energy that I was putting in my old relationship into just myself and what I was doing and into stand-up and all these things that I loved doing, that was the shift that happened. And it was like sex wasn't something that needed to happen. It was a cool bonus to life.
Yeah, it would sometimes happen.
Yeah, but not a necessity for feeling okay. Which I think also probably related to the molestation too, where it's like receiving validation or something from sex. I don't know.
No, yeah, you feel accepted and approved.
Yeah.
Of, you feel like for that moment, you feel like you're making the right decisions and doing the right things.
Yeah.
And it's based on, like you said, a warped value. But as soon as you get that prize, you realize that, and then that's when your shame cycle starts.
The shame cycle is very real. And
then because of that shame, you have to go and get that approval again.
It's a vicious cycle.
Honestly, going out specifically with a purpose to get laid always ends up like a night of cocaine. It's seriously, it seems fun, it sounds fun, it looks fun, but when you do it, you tell yourself it's fun, but at the end of the night, you just end up like doing whatever you got to do to like get that last hit in.
Dude, and when you go out without any expectation, that's when the best things happen.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with relationships.
I'm just going out to have a beer.
Yeah, you go out for the sake of having fun, and then that's what you're attracting into your life. Is more fun experiences, and it's not something that needs to happen. I felt the same way with like relationships, and like the moment I stopped needing anyone else for feelings, that was like the moment I started like realizing like, oh, like I have everything that I need already within myself. Every feeling that I'm trying to access externally is available internally. And sometimes it takes really desperately, needing that from other people to realize that like this is not sustainable, and that the moment you start providing that to yourself, that's when you attract people into your life that are like better than you could have imagined. When did you first do stand-up about getting molested?
Oh, immediately. I was.
Was that your first set?
No, I was doing that as part of my act in Seattle. But in Seattle, I ended up having to start my own show at my bar. It wasn't my bar, but I called it my bar. But anyway, I started a show there because all I get was 3 minutes in a lotto pool at this other place. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I have access to a stage. So I just did my own shit, and all the people in the bar like supported me and liked it, and that's where and it was raw. I'm sure if there's any recordings from back then, it's not great, but it was definitely like honest, and like I definitely talked about my molestation there. And I realized early on in my comedy career that I wanted that to be at least a focus for my first special, because and it was because people would come up to me and be like, that happened to me. Like I realized that it was like something that was good. There was something good happening with that. And that if I kept writing about it, the way I was presenting it was agreeable to most people. That's been the most challenging thing, is to say these jokes in a way that people are with me, and and having to change my real story, because I used to do the real shit. Like I used to do like jokes about the shit I was telling you about, and nobody really wants to hear that unless they are pissed drunk.
So that was the introduction of the uncle then.
Yes, I had to make up an uncle touchy.
Uncle, so it made them feel better about it.
And even then, it's a little dark for some people. Like some people still like. I had a friend I work with. She walked away from the show the other night, and I had to come up to her because I only recently became friends with her, and I had to assure her, I was like, no, like that really happened to me.
Yeah.
I made it funny too. She was like, did like that actually all happen to you? And I was like, of course not. My uncle never took me to Disneyland. Like, so I had fun with it, but she understood. Like I made it clear to her, like that actually happened to me, and that's how I deal with it. And like I'm trying to help people, not hurt people. And she was like very receptive for that after I was able to talk to her. But I've also had people wave chicken fingers at me and be like, shut the fuck up.
Really?
Yes. And I've been like, no, you shut the fuck up.
In response to your molestation material.
Yeah, but one girl told me I wasn't allowed to talk about that, and I was like, why? And she was like, because it didn't happen to you. And I was like, how fucking dare you?
Why is
you
that
literally
an
just,
assumption?
I was like, you literally just said that didn't happen to me. It's like, what if you told me you got raped? And that was my response to you. And this was in Seattle, in the Me Too movement.
It's not different.
It's not at all. And she couldn't say anything. And
I think what it
I
is
was pissed.
that has reasonably so.
And she stayed mad at me too. Like, she didn't give up. Like, later on, she stayed at the bar. And then later on, because I fucking worked there, like, I would be a bartender and then go up and do my act and go back to bartending. And so I was like clearing a table later on, and she like fucking came up to me and she was like, I didn't appreciate the way you talked to me. I was like, you interrupted me and victim blamed me.
Well, it's always interesting when people are so adverse to believing that these things happen, because it happens to people when they speak up.
I was like, why? Because I'm a white male?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to take advantage.
I feel like part of it is just that it's such an absurd thing for so many people to consider that, like, people who have been molested would want to go on stage and talk and joke about it.
Like, it's more believable to them that I'm just making that up for funsies.
Yeah, and then they have to take the
Like
moral
a
high ground of, I'm going to show this guy.
Yeah,
Don't worry,
right?
everybody,
Like,
I got this. Like,
Captain Save-A-Ho. Like, where were you when I was 4, bitch?
Yeah. What you're trying to achieve, you're doing the opposite by trying to take me down. It's so silly, but people have that reaction.
It's very selfish reaction, and I have to have mercy for those people, because honestly, my thought is it probably happened to those people the most.
Probably.
That's why they're so resistant to it. It's like, I don't want to think about it. I've spent 20 years repressing it. Why are you talking about it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the vibe I got from this lady. Like, I'm sure she got molested.
Well, and it's so much better to approach those situations with a sense of empathy and to understand that, like, okay, that's very likely the reason. Just because it happened to you doesn't mean you get to tell everybody how to process it.
Right.
You're causing her to now have things come up that she didn't want to have come up, and
some people are okay with it just being in the far, far background for their whole life. Like, some people can be functional alcoholics, Some people can be functional trauma victims. Like, they can push it far enough back and it just stays there, and maybe it bleeds out on, hitting their kid every once in a while. Hopefully that's like the best case scenario, but
I don't know if that's best case, but yeah,
well, I mean, as long as they don't start raping,
it could be worse.
It could be worse.
So
I have a low standard. I just want I just want to be treated regular.
Yeah. Stand-up really can accelerate healing because it allows you to not only speak and process these things, but in a way that allows you to feel okay. And
it's acceptable, and not only acceptable, you're getting that approval feeling that you would get from drugs or from sex.
A whole new way to view experiences that...
It's a healthy coping mechanism. And you're relating and help. It's socially appropriate. Not just acceptable, it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You should be talking about it with strangers. The
ways,
nicest people to me during going through all the things I've gone through have always been people I had no idea who they were until I met them, and they were just like kind strangers to me. Like the dude with the acid. I really never talked to him much after that. I met him, I gave him a ride on the side of the road, and turned out he was like rich and like had like he lived in the same building as Chuck Palahniuk.
I don't know who that is.
He wrote Fight Club.
Oh,
and like a bunch of other amazing books. So like, it just like strangers have always been the kindest people to me, and any money I make is gonna go towards like helping people. Like, I don't give a shit about Ferraris and all that shit. Like, I'm gonna probably build a homeless shelter down here somewhere that's like privately run and the government has no say in, because it's a need down here. And Seattle's much better, but anyway, that's a different topic.
What advice would you give to somebody who has been through something similar, who's hoping to get to the point that you're at now?
Honestly, just talk about it. Find a way to talk about it. Write it if you can't talk about it. Get it out of you. That's the first step. Like, you can't deal with it if no one can see it. You can't pull splinters out of your own eye to borrow from the Bible or whatever. You need help with something like that, and getting it out is when you start healing, because when it's in there, there's nothing, like, it can only grow around that pain. And so if you don't get that splinter out, nothing's going to heal. And if you get it out, it'll start healing. It may take you longer. It may stumble through it, but getting it out is the most important part, I think. And the world will take care of the rest.
It's so true. And you never really know until you do it how amazing it feels to like get it off of your chest. The more you speak up, the more you realize, oh my God, I'm not alone at all. There's so many people that know what I've been through and can empathize with me, and there's so much healing available to all of us just by being willing to talk about it, whether that's to a therapist or to a friend or to a stranger, or writing a note to yourself, just finding a way to get it out.
It'll help you in general be a better communicator, because if you could talk about something like that, you could talk about anything.
Yeah, it's so true.
Like, there's nothing that you can't, like, once you develop that comfortability on that level, like, there's seriously nothing's off limits. So that just as a comic, it's helped me professionally, which was unintended consequence, but also as a person, someone with our experiences. Well, I mean, maybe I don't know all of your past experiences, but I'll speak for myself. But some of my experiences, it's very hard to communicate effectively with peers, because I don't think about things the same way that they do. Like, even people my own age now, they're operating from a life that, like, and yeah, lots of people have had trauma, but like, I've always been me. And like, I've never really dealt with other people, and I'm like just now learning how to like depend on people and to really trust other people. And I'm doing that like in LA, which is not the best environment for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's fucked me over a few times, but it's also like, it's good. Like, it's good that I'm finally able to communicate and all that just came from just getting it out the first time.
Yeah.
And like, yeah.
I love it, man. I can't thank you enough for doing this and for coming on here and sharing your story.
It's been great.
It's really cool, and I feel so fortunate to know you now and to be able to come here and do this podcast and do open mics. And
dude, you're very funny. You're going to be great.
You are too, dude. I appreciate that. And where can people find you on social media?
At comedian_Joshy with a Y on Instagram.
Perfect. Well, check out Joshy. I know you can't see us anymore, but here we are. Check out Joshy on Instagram. And yeah, dude, this has been great. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.